A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. I'm Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. Hopefully you had a great weekend. All of you that were in Knoxville for the Gun Owners of America Leadership Summit, hope you had a fantastic time. I am sorry that I couldn't be there. We've also got the big rally coming up later this week at Boston Common. We'll be talking about that with Nolan Howard on the program this week. But today, we're going to be talking about the most unintentionally hilarious headline that I have seen regarding the Harris-Walz campaign. We'll get to that in just a moment. Before we do, though, let's talk about this for a second. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and your 401k hard. With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it is no wonder that central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't thought about gold yet, now's the time. Trust Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver by texting GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings, and you can act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Just text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD. All right, now I will confess that there is not much that I find amusing about the current state of the Harris-Walz campaign. I had a piece at Bearing Arms earlier today where Democrats are now basically encouraging Kamala Harris to not offer any specific policies until after the election is over. Yeah, we've gone from Nancy Pelosi, you've got to vote for the bill to find out what's in it. Tonight you've got to vote for the candidate to find out what they'll do if they're elected, which I think is listen, as far as a campaign strategy goes, it says a lot about the Harris-Walz campaign, right? That the more detail they get, the worse off they're going to be. And even the Democrats know this. This is just, again, a terrible way of running an election. Anyway, that is not amusing to me. This headline, on the other hand, from Bloomberg columnist Francis Wilkinson, is very much amusing. Tim Walz's masculinity is terrifying to Republicans. Yeah. Can't you tell? I mean, what are we going to do? Yeah. Wilkinson, actually, I don't think this is meant to be comedy. I think Wilkinson is serious about this. Writing at their packed campaign launch in Philadelphia on Tuesday, Harris lauded Coach Walz, honored his veteran status, and beamed with pride that Walz was, quote, known as one of Capitol Hill's best marksmen, winning a bipartisan sharpshooting contest year after year. Wilkinson writes, those traditional manly traits are threatening enough on their own, but if such a marksman, state title-winning football coach and regular guy can happily play second fiddle to a black woman running for president, then what does that say about MAGA's efforts to reverse engineer the 21st century? After all, if a middle-aged heterosexual white guy who likes to hunt doesn't have to live in constant fear of losing status and doesn't need traditional gender and racial hierarchies to validate his life choices, then what does he need Donald Trump and J.D. Vance for? I don't know, maybe to protect our right to keep and bear arms. I mean, I know that, Tim Walz is bragging about his sharpshooting skills as well as his military service, which we've talked about extensively here on this program before. But I'll be honest with you, I don't really care about Walz's, personal history any more than I care about Kamala Harris's personal history. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to or for that matter, Donald Trump or J.D. Vance's personal history. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to electing a president, this is basically a job interview, right? You're hiring somebody to do a job. And in that sense, I want to know what they plan to do on the job. And as far as Tim Walz goes, well, back in Congress, he was a pretty reliable supporter of the Second Amendment. When he decided to run for governor of Minnesota, on the other hand, he kind of switched on a dime, right? Gave back the NRA donations that he had happily accepted over the years. I don't want them anymore. Proudly touted his F rating from the NRA. He embraced a gun control agenda. Now, Harris has tried to moderate her views in the other way, right? When she was the district attorney in San Francisco, she signed on, actually helped to co-author, an amicus brief arguing in support of D.C.'s ban on handguns. as well as the storage requirement that basically made it impossible to use a handgun for self-defense in your home, even if you had lawfully acquired and registered one of those handguns before D.C. banned the sale and possession going forward. She argued that the Second Amendment really didn't protect an individual right to keep and bear arms. As district attorney in San Francisco, she tried to shut down gun stores at the Cow Palace. As the Attorney General of California, she defended all of California's gun control laws, including the microstamping mandate. She has bemoaned the Bruin decision, calling it an affront to the Constitution and common sense just a couple of years ago, right? And as we've talked about on this program before, polls show that about, over 2/3, according to the last Marquette University Law School poll, 69% of Americans say that they support the Bruin decision. So, no, I'm not threatened by Tim Walz's masculinity. I'm concerned about the damage that 4 years of a Harris-Walz administration would do to our right to keep and bear arms. Now, Wilkinson says, of course, it's not really about looks. No. It's about how voters respond to such cultural signals. University of Pittsburgh historian Laura Putnam, who studies grassroots politics, told me that Walz has the ability to gain traction in rural and exurban Pennsylvania. She cites the example of Democrat and veteran Connor Lamb, who won a special election for Congress in 2018 as a Trumpy Western Republican in a Trumpy Western Pennsylvania district. For those who canvassed for Lamb, Putnam said Lamb's military service was the single most important fact for hitting the threshold of consideration at the doors. That's why the instant and all-out effort to swift voting Walz's military service, that life experience and credential is super meaningful there. Now, first of all, Wilkinson ignores the fact that the Harris-Walz campaign has actually had to go back and correct Tim Walz's statement, saying that he misspoke when he said that he carried a weapon of war in war when he never served in combat. The claiming of a title, Command Master Sergeant, that he did not retire with, again, has been brought up time and again. But, we've also pointed out that Walz wasn't able to make any gains in rural Minnesota when he ran for governor. Despite, again, having served as a congressman in southern Minnesota for close to a decade, right? And in a conservative district, when Walz decided to run statewide, he dropped his moderate policies. He dropped his sort of blue dog democracy and ran to the left. And rural voters recognized that for what it was. And they voted against Tim Walz. In fact, the 1st congressional district, which he represented in Congress, went for the Republican candidate in his first and his second gubernatorial campaign. So there's not really any evidence, quite frankly, that Walz can appeal to rural voters. Maybe, again, when he was taking a pro-Second Amendment point of view, he appealed to rural voters in the 1st congressional district of Minnesota. But since he has embraced gun control, no, there's not really any evidence that that's been a winning strategy for Walz, at least in terms of rural outreach. Wilkinson does say that Walz's shooting prowess presents a similar problem to his, veteran status. Speaking to CNN's Anderson Cooper last month, Walz trash-talked Vance. I guarantee you he can't shoot pheasants like I can. Because, that's what we're all looking for in a vice presidential candidate. Who's the best pheasant hunter, right? Yeah. Wilkinson went on to quote Randy Kozik, executive director of the NRA Institute for Legislative Action, who told the Washington Post that a, quote, camo hat can't camouflage the fact that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are gun-grabbing radicals who support confiscating firearms from law-abiding hunters and gun owners. Wilkinson says Kozik's gun-grabbing claim is ridiculous, given that Walz grabs his own gun to go hunting. But Walz supports popular gun regulations that the NRA opposes, and he does so as a hunter in a camo hat. The NRA, like Vance, has no answer to that because its success depends on making people who look like Walz afraid of people who don't. Now, again, this is Francis Wilkinson writing for Bloomberg, right? But this whole idea that, he's a gun owner, so how can he support gun bans? I don't know, you'd have to ask him, because he's the one out there saying that nobody needs to carry AR-15s except the military. That was, and by the way, that was in his corrected statement about the carrying weapons of war in war. When the Harris-Walz campaign had to go back and say, he misspoke 6 years ago when he said that he carried a weapon of war in war. they made sure to say that Walz believes only the military should have access to AR-15s and other semi-automatic long guns. So, yeah, Walz is a gun owner, and Walz wants to ban guns. Now, Walz hasn't come out and said, I want to ban every gun, but Walz is in favor of banning the most commonly sold and popular rifles in the country, and there's no disguising that. No matter how much camo hat or how many friendly Bloomberg columnists you have stumping for you. That is a fact. So it is not ridiculous, as Wilkinson writes, to say that Walz is a gun grabber or Kamala Harris is a gun grabber. Again, supposedly Harris has backed off of her stance 5 years ago that not only do we need to ban AR-15s and other modern sporting rifles, but that we need to have a mandatory buyback of all of those guns that are currently in the hands of, lawful owners, right? A compensated confiscation scheme. Her campaign says she no longer believes that. They haven't said why she no longer believes that. They haven't laid out the scope of what she does now believe should be banned, what the punishment should be for continuing to possess one of these firearms, right? How broad that ban would look like. They haven't gotten any details. And again, based on that Politico article I cited earlier in the show, they don't want to release any details. They don't want to get specific. They want to keep this campaign as vague and vacuous as possible between now and November because they know that when you start delving into the specifics of Democrat policies, it turns off voters. And so you not only get Kamala Harris largely running away from the press, when the press does have the opportunity to ask her a question or two, most of these friendly outlets are asking her questions, sort of horse race questions, right, about the debate or asking a question about Donald Trump. They are not delving into her shifting positions. They're not asking her, why? Why did you change your mind on fracking? Why? Why did you change your mind about the scope of a so-called assaultment's ban? Not that they would use the phrase so-called, right? They don't want to ask those questions. Again, I don't think they want to press Kamala Harris. And I think that they're happy to avoid putting her in a position where she would have to give an honest answer about something like that. So instead, we get the media tongue baths from columnists like Francis Wilkinson of Bloomberg, trying to make the claim that, again, Republicans are just terrified of Tim Walz's masculinity. As Wilkinson concludes the piece, Walz is dangerous to Trump and Vance precisely because he has the capacity to calm such fears. Yet if Harris openly inflames, Walz also subtly indicts. He's not frightened of women, afraid of black people, or terrified of the future. Why are you? What if I'm not? I mean, that's the thing, right? This is, I think, so telling about why Democrats are going to struggle to connect with independent voters, certainly with Republicans and conservatives, right? Because their argument basically comes down to, if you don't support us, well, you must be a racist. If you don't support us, you must be a misogynist. If you don't support us, why? You want to drag this country backwards, right? Now, I could point to the fact that we had a 10-year ban on so-called assault weapons from 1994 to 2004. So maybe it's Harris and Walz who want to take us backwards, right? They want to reinstitute that ban, but this time they want to make it permanent. Presumably they want to make it bigger and broader than it was back in the 90s and early 2000s. So couldn't you say that it's the Harris-Walz campaign that wants us to go back to the past, to the bad old days again when we were banning firearms based on cosmetic features? I think so. I'm not terrified of Tim Walz's masculinity. I would dare say that it's not even a threat to me. What does scare me, however, is a campaign that has two candidates who are historically opposed to our right to keep and bear arms. In Kamala Harris's case, again, doesn't even see it or didn't even see it in 2008 as an individual right to be protected. And Walz, who claims now to support the Second Amendment, but never really talks about what that support means, right? Instead, it's all of the things that can be done to our right to keep and bear arms that, in Walz's view, won't impact our Second Amendment rights. That does concern me, particularly because what we've seen during the past 4 years is an executive branch willing to violate and overstep its own authority to impose restrictions on gun owners when the votes aren't there in Congress. And yes, you can say the same thing about the Trump administration and the bump stock ban. Trump at least has said he's not going to be doing anything like that in the future. I haven't heard that from Kamala Harris, right? She's not said, hey, you know what, looking back, it was a bad idea for us to promulgate these rules on unfinished frames and receivers, on stabilizing braces, on who's engaged in the business of selling firearms. All of these things should have been left up to Congress. Harris isn't saying that at all. And remember, as part of Harris's portfolio, she is ostensibly in charge of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, where a lot of these rules have been dreamt up. So that's what concerns me, Francis. It's not Tim Walz's past as a football coach or a member of the military or even his pheasant hunting. Nope. What concerns me is his eagerness to sell out Second Amendment supporters when he decided to run for statewide office. What concerns me is Kamala Harris's decades-long history of hostility to our right to keep and bear arms. Because my right to keep and bear arms is not about Tim Walz engaging in marksmanship competitions. My right to keep and bear arms is not about Tim Walz pheasant hunting. My right to keep and bear arms is about my ability to exercise my Second Amendment rights, my ability to protect my family, my ability to own commonly sold firearms for lawful purposes. That's what I'm concerned about. And Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? Not only have they done nothing to reassure me, they've made it clear that my Second Amendment rights will be under attack if they win office. All right. Before we get to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, let's talk about this here. With the volatility from the election and our national debt just breaking $35 trillion for the first time ever, there has never been a better time than now to consider physical gold or silver as a way to protect your savings. If this election goes sideways, there's a good chance that things are going to get even worse. Now, the good news is that there's something you can do now ahead of whatever future chaos might be coming. Wealth Protection Research has found a gold partner in Sasco Gold that specializes in helping everyday Americans protect their retirement accounts like 401ks, IRAs, or TSPs using a loophole that allows them to convert into physical gold or silver tax and penalty free. You can learn more when you text the word TRUTH to 76626. You can break free from your captive retirement account and enjoy the peace of mind knowing that your retirement savings now stored in physical gold and silver that you control. If you're interested in learning the truth about how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver, you can get a free gold investment kit that explains it all from Sasco Gold just by texting TRUTH to 76626. Drew from Sasco standing by waiting to help. When you text TRUTH to 76626, just tell Drew that Cam sent you. And again, for your free gold investment kit, text TRUTH to 76626 now. All right, let's turn our attention to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a story out of Nebraska. Teens charged as adults in murder of 64-year-old man held without bond. Now, these teens, 17-year-old Trenton Titsworth Hunt, 16-year-old Talon Wilson, and 14-year-old Joseph Keys, all charged as adults in the shooting death of a 64-year-old named Mursal Jama at an apartment complex in Omaha, Nebraska, late Tuesday. There are two other juveniles who police believe are also involved in this murder, but they are too young to be charged as adults. In fact, a 13-year-old cannot legally be charged as an adult because of his age. An 11-year-old murder suspect can't even be detained because he is too young, according to KETV in Omaha. But at least one of these teens, in fact, two of these teens, face additional charges of unlawful possession of a firearm by a prohibited minor. Now, obviously, again, generally speaking, minors can't possess handguns to begin with, But KETV reports that Titsworth Hunt has been on probation. He's the 17-year-old, Trenton Titsworth Hunt. He's been on probation since May. Last Thursday, police announced the arrest of 16-year-old Taylor Wilson, who faces criminal homicide, 2 counts of robbery, 3 counts of use of a weapon to commit a felony, possession of a gun by a juvenile, and 2 warrants for unlawful absence charges. Wilson has also been on probation since February and admitted that he was on the run. In court last Friday, prosecutors say that starting last Tuesday night, there were actually a crew of 6 juveniles that ran up to 2 victims trying to take their car. They got away with a wallet and some money. Hours later, Jamal was sitting in his garage after his shift as an Uber driver. That's when the teens carjacked him, shot him in the stomach, and he later died of his injuries. Douglas County Attorney Don Klein says it's an odd grouping. When you think about the different ages of the individuals involved in it, it's kind of that group mentality. Well, it is odd, but I don't know how unusual it is these days, because it seems like there are a lot of cities that are reporting maybe an overall decline in juvenile crime, but a rise in serious violent incidents committed by juveniles. Seattle, Washington is another one of these cities where we're seeing an uptick in this. And we've been reporting at Bearing Arms on the increasing number of smash and grab burglaries of gun stores in particular that are being committed by juveniles. And part of the problem is, again, the juvenile justice system. It's not about incarceration, right? Its focus is on rehabilitation. And so how good a job the criminal justice system is doing with that, I think, is very much an open question. But when you get individuals, again, who have been arrested at 15 or 16 years old for carrying a gun, maybe there's a crime of violence involved in there as well, and they're sentenced to nothing more than probation, that sends a message. Sends the wrong message. Sends a message that, hey, you know what? We don't really think what you did was all that serious. And if you do it again, probably not going to take it that seriously either. Now, it's a slightly different situation when you have an individual as young as 11 years old being charged with murder, in which case I think maybe it is time to go back and revisit, okay, what are the standards here for charging juveniles with crimes? You could argue that an 11-year-old doesn't know right from wrong. I think back to when I was 11. Was I a fully formed and functional adult? No. Although I was like a year away from having to start to shave, now that I think about it. But I also did know you don't murder somebody in their car because you want the keys or their wallet, right? That's a lesson that I would say 99.9% of us, frankly, don't even have to get imparted to us. But again, the vast majority of 11-year-olds know that murder is wrong. So when you can't even detain an 11-year-old because the age just doesn't allow it, that's a problem. And again, as we're seeing more and more serious crimes committed by younger and younger individuals, I think we need some serious changes to the criminal justice system going forward here. Now, today's Armed Citizen story from Fayette County, Pennsylvania, where police say a burglary suspect shot by a homeowner managed to survive despite being shot twice in the face by the homeowner in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. This was western Pennsylvania. And it was, I believe, over the weekend when this happened, Saturday night. According to the Pennsylvania State Police, they were called to a home in Henry Clay Township about 11:30 in the evening for a report of burglary in progress. When police got there, they found the suspect still on the scene, again, having been shot twice in the face by the homeowner. Fayette County DA Micah Belli says it's very strange. Thank God the homeowner was armed, or this could have been a lot worse. Yeah. The DA, thank God the homeowner was armed. This could have been a lot worse. They learned that the homeowner retrieved a firearm, confronted the intruder who refused to leave, and then fired multiple shots, hitting the intruder twice. Belli says they expect to clear the homeowner today. He says, I don't see any reason why I would be charging him. He acted well within his rights. The intruder identified as 60-year-old David Luzak of Cleveland. I'm not sure if that's Cleveland, Pennsylvania or Cleveland, Ohio, but according to authorities, Luzak had walked around multiple rooms of the home before he left. That's where he was confronted by the homeowner on the homeowner's driveway. And then Luzak tried to re-enter the home. He didn't take anything from inside. Belli says they're still determining whether or not he had a weapon. but he does have a criminal history, apparently. According to the prosecutor, Luzak was previously charged with murder in a 2013 homicide. Abelli says he's unsure if it was convicted, which is odd in and of itself. You'd think you'd have access to that information as a district attorney. Abelli said it's a very scary thing. It's not something we'd like to have happen in Fayette County. Everybody deserves to feel safe in their home and take appropriate action to protect their house, protecting their castle. Luzak right now looks like he's facing charges of burglary and criminal trespass. Again, the homeowner not facing any charges at all because he was well within his rights to protect himself and his family. Now, today's good deed of the day, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, also involving a good Samaritan and a armed citizen who was a good Samaritan, helping to save a missing child who was the subject of a manhunt there in Louisiana. Stephen James says, as a kid, I'd do anything for a kid. So Friday night, this was in Lafayette, Tennessee. I say this was in Louisiana. Pardon me for that. Lafayette, Tennessee. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation puts out an alert on a missing child. This is Friday night. Police then showed up at James's property and said, hey, can we search? We think the guy might be around here. James learned that the man named Gerald Blair was on the run after a hit-and-run accident. Macon County Sheriff says Blair ended up wrecking his car during a chase and took off with his little girl, Mabry Likey, who was the daughter of Blair's girlfriend. Police believe that Blair and Mabry were in the woods near James's home. So they looked on Friday night. They didn't find anything. But Saturday morning, James learned that the two were by a creek just outside of his home. There was a neighbor's, I guess it was a trail camera that must have picked him up. And James grabbed his gun. He said, I did hold him at gunpoint just to kind of be threatening and take control of the situation. I did tell him, give me the baby. I don't care what you do, just give me the baby. He said, actually, I think I was saying, put the baby down and you walk back and I'll get the baby. James says, kind of went back and forth with Blair until Blair finally surrendered. He said it was almost a feeling of relief. He knew that it was over. He said that he and his wife stayed with the little girl until first responders arrived. He said, you could tell he cared. He said it was just a bad situation for her. He said, I'm glad I got to do that. Not because I wanted to be the one to do it. I'm just glad that it turned out that way. Authorities say Blair had a seizure after handing over the child to James. He is now facing several charges, including child abuse, and the Department of Children's Services also involved in this case. You know, again, I don't know what Gerald Blair's intentions were, but I am very glad that Stephen James was in the right place at the right time and willing and able to do the right thing to save that little girl and get her back to her mom. Whether or not he would have been able to do that without having a firearm by his side, I think is very much an open question. And again, when it comes to our right to keep and bear arms, it's not really about hunting pheasants, right? It's really about protecting ourselves, the people we love, and in some cases, even total strangers from harm. And that is something that you'll never hear Tim Walz or Kamala Harris talk about. For them, the Second Amendment is maybe about hunting. Maybe it's about target shooting. And again, only with pre-approved firearms, right? But when it comes to doing what Stephen James did, you will never hear that campaign or those candidates speak a word of praise for the armed citizen who stepped up and saved that one-year-old child. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. I'm looking forward to seeing you back here again tomorrow. Don't forget to check bearingarms.com throughout the day. We're keeping you up to date on all of the latest Second Amendment news and information, be it litigation, legislation, regulation, or, just random culture war attacks on, gun owners' masculinity. whatever. We've got you covered there at BearingArms.com. Make sure you check out the website. If you like what you see, I'd also encourage you to become a VIP or VIP Gold member. Just use the promo code SAVEAMERICA and you get a significant savings on your VIP or VIP Gold membership. You'll get exclusive content, you'll get an ad-free experience, you'll get other benefits, but you'll also be supporting the independent pro segment of journalism that we're doing at Bearing Arms. And I thank you for that very much because your support is truly appreciated. Have a great rest of your Monday, as well as a Monday can be. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, be free.